The stillness that followed that moment was so loud that spectators watching the live feed couldn't believe what they had just heard. Hints treachery, but clearly lays it out. Jim hadn't displayed them yet, but the sheer fact that he claimed to have them was enough to send shockwaves through the hip-hop scene. People began exploring the internet for old interviews and life stories in an attempt to locate any information that could verify Jim's allegations. It was no longer only hearsay, but rather a mystery being solved in real time. Jim Jones at its core, people started writing comments begging Camron to respond, others naming Chrissy in every post they could locate, but both of them were silent. One admirer noted, "Why aren't they saying anything?" Another person added, "This got real. Too fast, I feel like we're witnessing a full movie." There were no denials or affirmations, and silence only served to add to the drama. Jim did not back down, and later that evening he posted on his own Instagram a dark screen with a single line of white letters that read, "Loyalty over everything, including love." Within minutes, people speculated about what it meant, wondering if he was done with Chrissy Cam and, more crucially, if this was the beginning of a full-fledged rupture between two of hip-hop's most legendary individuals. Behind the scenes, sources close to Jim stated that he hadn't been sleeping well and had been pacing, thinking and reliving his story. Blobs picked it up, and screenshots of his story were all over the place. Jim had only whispered metaphors and clues in the hopes that Chrissy would confess, but she never did. Instead, he continued to act like, despite all, a strange anonymous user published a screen capture of what appeared to be a private event cam, with Chrissy standing in the same room somewhat too close. It was low and muted, but you could plainly hear laughter. And then there was a moment when Cam leaned in to whisper something to her. This was usual, which just made him spiral more. Jim didn't directly acknowledge the clip, but the following day, he went live again. This time his tone was colder, less emotional, and more focused. Chrissy's smile lasted too long, and the energy between them. Undeniable, the video went viral in minutes, with fans referring to it as the Camp Chrissy film and dissecting it frame by frame. All I ever wanted was the truth, which he presented, calmly and without apologies or deception. He did not bring up names because everyone knew who he was referring to. He stopped the romance swiftly after 5 minutes, leaving fans with more questions than answers. While Chrissy was under increasing strain, she began to turn. She stopped going live on her latest posts. Even more tellingly, she failed to show up for a public appearance she had been marketing for weeks. Fans immediately observed that she was hiding someone who wrote, "I know Jim ain't playing Camron." But she continued posting as if nothing was going on, including memes and throwback photographs. But if you look closely, some of his captions began to seem sharp, such as the one in which he wrote, "Sometimes silence is the loudest." Fans viewed it as a direct shot at Jim, meaning that Cam wasn't contributing to the drama in public, but that things were boiling up behind closed doors. More insiders began to speak out anonymously, and naturally one of them stated that there had always been a rivalry between Jim and Cam, that this was not the first time that tensions had flared over trust difficulties. The source claimed that, although they were brothers, they had their disputes, and the presence of a lady in the middle just made matters worse. Then, just when things couldn't get any messier, someone close to Chrissy claimed to have released the text exchange between her and Cam. The texts weren't graphic, but they did reflect a warm, flirting tone. Nothing was incriminating, but the timing and energy suggested something more serious. Jim, on the other side, submitted a weird video to the story that showed him alone in the city at night, with no caption or any music fans. Thought it to be an indicator that he was disconnecting from everyone by this time. The tale had stretched beyond what anyone had imagined, and it was now about betrayal and trust, as well as what happens when private and public clash in the most chaotic way. Fans were split, with some backing Jim and others standing with others, believing he was exaggerating, without evidence, but it was clear that the harm had been done. There were now reports that Jim had temporarily moved out, while others said he was residing with a cousin in Harlem. Nothing was verified, but the existence of those rumors at the time caused fans to begin making timelines by comparing film from past years and studying times where Chrissy, just when everyone thought the storm might wane, Jim did something that sparked it all in a separate interview, a pre-recorded one that aired just days after the podcast explosion. And Cam had even the smallest interaction. People who had never cared about the Dipset drama were now deeply immersed, treating the tale as if it were reality TV. Jim grinned, shook his head, and answered, "I used to think loyalty was real, but now I know better." The interviewer wanted to explore more, but Jim remained evasive, but the meaning was plain. Fans began to doubt whether Chrissy's silence meant guilt, or if she was simply overwhelmed and waited for the storm to pass. Meanwhile, she stayed silent, posting no stories and making no appearances, and the silence became the loudest sound in the room. As a result, the internet wasn't every hour new memes, edits, and hypotheses arose on social media. Leaked audio snippets supposedly revealed Jim chatting on the phone with a member of his inner circle, and his voice sounded heavy with exhaustion. I felt as if I was the last to know what he said, as if everyone else had predicted it but me. That one line went viral. Supporters. Even if the truth hadn't been fully revealed, the harm was irreversible. Friendships were frayed, trust was broken, and Jim Jones, famed for his strength and loyalty, suddenly seemed more human and vulnerable than ever before. It was used in captions reactions. A devastating scene from a recent live podcast sent fans reeling, and Jim Jones was visibly distraught and unable to suppress his emotions any longer. As the city watched, followers studied every word, and every post left one question hanging in the air. Would Jim forgive them? Or was this betrayal too deep to ever come back from the internet? During a raw, unscripted session, Jim dropped a bombshell that left fans gasping, accusing Chrissy of betrayal and hinting to a scandalous night involving none other than Camron. The news has kicked off what has been labeled one of the most explosive rants of the year. Despite tensions simmering behind the scenes for weeks, as the podcast episode continues to go viral, there is a frenzy of speculation on social strive trying to put together what happened. Was it a mistake, or is there more to Camron and Chrissy's connection than anyone realized? Emotions are running high, and cryptic postings and whispers, Jim's words echo. The entire hip-hop community is now watching, waiting, and wondering just how deep this story truly is. Continues. The days that followed were loaded with suspense, with no official comments or clarifications. In that period, followers started social media threads about their personal truths, which descended into endless hypotheses. Some people claimed Chrissy had been emotionally distant for months, while some thought Cam had always carried a flame for her. Nobody knew the answers, but everyone had ideas, which only helped to stoke the already burning fire. Then there was an unexpected turn. A shaky video recorded from a phone that was evidently taken without permission shows Camron and Chrissy having a private talk off to the side. The body language was intimate, not amorous, yet Chrissy leaned in. Cam murmured something. The video was stolen during a recent music video session in which both of them were supposedly. Jim saw it, and later that night, when he tweeted a single statement to Twitter, "I was always the last to know," since fans didn't need an explanation, because they had already connected the dots within minutes of her stroking his arm and leaving. There was no sound or context, but for a public already ravenous for controversy, it was enough. It had become the slogan for treachery, and tales were spreading like advertisement. One insider said Jim hired a private investigator weeks ago when he first got suspicious, while another said he had already confronted Chrissy off camera, and it did not go well. Nothing could be verified, but the lack of denial was the only thing that could be proven, making people believe it more. According to rumors, Chrissy's friends attempted to reach her, but she was not returning calls, and her social media accounts were inactive. This was odd for someone who usually updates on social media, but Camron remained unaffected. Uploading a series pictures from a past tour showed him beaming while admirers flashed jewelry and penned mysterious comments. Captions like, "Some stories don't need explaining," left followers confused. Were they being sidetracked by his trolling, or this, in any case, his unwillingness to refute or defend, only fueled the notion that Jim's once tight-knit and committed inner group was crumbling behind closed door and detached manner. When asked if he was okay, he merely nodded and proceeded to walk without saying anything or smiling. Then, in yet another shock, a longtime close friend of Chrissy's who hadn't spoken to the public in years came out and said, She had, "When I first saw an awkward situation, I didn't think much of it," she added, referring to a chat between Chrissy and Cam at a private party in 2018. But looking back, it all makes sense. Jim felt stuck once more. I won't mention names, but when you give someone your loyalty and they treat you like a fool, it changes you. It doesn't only hurt, it hardens you. I'm not the same man I was a month ago. Jim broke his silence once more in a new live broadcast. This time he wasn't ranting or blaming, instead he was calm. Fans watched with their hearts in their throats, and Jim looked fatigued, like a man who cared too much. After only 6 minutes, he stopped the live broadcast with just his words and a glance that said it all. He cracked only slightly when he said, "Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the most." It became a key moment when followers who had previously been divided began to unify behind him and support Jim at all costs. Trending celebrities began liking his postings, and some who had remained silent started sending cryptic messages of support. The mood had changed. It was no longer simply gossip. It was empathy. People saw a broken man and it touched a nerve. Chrissy was reportedly trying to reach Jim. According to a person acquainted with the case, she had sent multiple texts and voice calls seeking to cool things down, but Jim was not responding. Some stated he wasn't ready, while others believed he was utterly foolish. The press began circling blogs that provided timetables in an attempt to pinpoint when the alleged affair may have occurred. When old interviews were re-examined, clues. For example, when Chrissy smiled at Cam too frequently and Jim's body language seemed unusual, it developed into a digital inquiry with fans playing as detectives. While Cam's feelings remained unedited, his quiet began to work against him. It used to appear as indifference, but now it appears as avoidance. Fans began clamoring for clarification, saying, "You owe Jim another." Tweet wrote, "Real men don't hide, they speak up." Cammy remained. Nothing. Posting instead a flashback photo of him and Jim from the early days of DPET with the statement, "Brothers fight, but blood is thicker." This was the first time he made a hazy awareness of the issue, and at the IED, at the very least, worsened the division. Was it an attempt to patch things up, or instead of participating, Jim uploaded another, enigmatic story? This time with the remark, "Sometimes the bond you thought was impenetrable was already broken, you just didn't realize it." Was he manipulating, trying to make peace? Or both fans were torn? Then suddenly, a bombshell email was revealed, supposedly, between Chrissy and her close friend David months before, which she emphasized her emotional separation with Jim and admitted that Cam understood her in ways Jim never did. The email was not validated, but it went viral. Fans of Wildfire felt fooled once more, and even those who had sought to support Chrissy began to mistrust everything. Jim again decided not to answer immediately, but that evening he posted an old video of him and Cam perform on stage, arms around each other, grinning with the caption, "Those were the days past." That single post was like a funeral for a friendship. Fans viewed it as a farewell, a silent goodbye to the bomb that once was. As for Chrissy, the pressure became too much. Late one night, she posted a black screen on her page with the words, "Nobody actually knows the whole tale. You guys only see parts." No explanation, no follow-up. But fans were relentless and filled her DMs. Her comments were strong and divided, with some giving sympathy and others criticizing. Despite all of this commotion, one thing was certain. Whether the affair occurred or the allegations were invented, Jim felt betrayed. And once that feeling settles in, it is tough to reverse the hurt that has been done. As the tale progressed, the tension between Jim Jones, Christy, and Camron reached a boiling point that even seasoned followers didn't predict. Followers who were waiting and refreshing pages for developments. It was the most tragic tragedy they'd seen in a long time. With each passing day, more individuals were Jim's mood altered further. He stopped posting photos and stopped advertising his projects, and even canceled 2 booked appearances. Even individuals who didn't generally follow hip-hop drama were intrigued by the situation that was brewing, and felt personal to many, like watching a family come apart in real time. People close to him stated that he wasn't eating well, wasn't sleeping well, and had stopped communicating to everyone, except his mother and a few childhood pals. One even mentioned that he had been spending his nights driving around the city, blaring old disco songs that once stood for fraternity and unity in an attempt to cleanse his mind. Chrissy's silence continued to speak louder than words when she was seen for a brief minute outside a Harlem cafe. She had enormous sunglasses and a sweatshirt pulled down, allowing paparazzi to grab a few grainy shots. Stayed silent, her countenance sad, as if she was carrying more than just regret. Rumors spread that her team had advised her to keep quiet until everything settled down, but fans weren't letting anything cool down. Speculations when someone found an old interview from years ago in which Chrissy had referred to Cam as family. Fans were now twisting the sentence, labeling it a code term, saying that it had all been evident the entire time. The podcast, which was supposed to be a laid-back, low-key episode of a show Jim had agreed to appear months in advance. The hosts were friends. The mood was laid back, but what happened live on air would go viral on the internet in a matter of minutes. Jim arrived very subdued, wearing dark shades, keeping his hood up, and barely smiling for the first 20 minutes. The chat was lighthearted, reflecting on earlier performances and music. But then, loyalty isn't what it used to be, the presenter observed in a low, steady voice. Jim waited for a long minute before bending forward, removing his spectacles and staring directly into the Jim wasn't shouting or upset, but something in his tone made it seem colder than if he had screamed, "Imagine sharing your dreams, your home, and your heart with them," he continued. "Do you filthy, and the worst part is you don't even find out from them. You find out on the streets." The host grew silent and no one dared to interject. Someone putting everything together, only to wake up one day and learn it was all a simple setup betrayal. The podcast went viral instantaneously, with comments like, "He's discussing Christy and Cam, which is devastating." While others begged him to clarify, Jim didn't need to identify names. Everyone already knew. One of the hosts tried to alter gears by asking if he believed there was any prospect of reconciliation. Jim didn't hesitate. "Nah," he said. "Some things break too deep and I want peace, not excuses. And peace doesn't come from those who straight-face their lies." As the episode finished, snatches spread like wildfire, and fans produced compilations, reaction films, and even poignant homages to an audio tape supposedly captured during a private argument between Jim and Chrissy weeks ago surfaced. The clip featured voices that sounded surprisingly similar to Jim's loyalty and pain, which once again trended online. Protect Jin at all expenses. For the first time, even those who had defended Chrissy began to rethink their thoughts. "I never meant for things to go that far," Chrissy stated in an honest, passionate, and emotional confrontation with Jim. "Responded, but you allowed him to come that close." The sound stopped. Chrissy's team quickly denied the recording was authentic, claiming it had been manipulated, but many fans weren't buying it. Said the voices were unmistakable and the feelings were too real to be manufactured. Whether it was authentic or not, the public had already made their decision, and Camron stayed silent, so they were the next target. That was all it took. Stoke the flames. When Cam finally submitted a video to the story, it was not a message, but rather him in the studio, bobbing his head to an unreleased song with lyrics that read, "Never trust a heart that flinches when it comes." Time to the statement was ambiguous, but many saw it as a jab. Thousands of people rushed his most recent tweet requesting that he speak up. Another oblique reaction in a saga already riddled with shadows and half-truths. Then suddenly, Chrissy broke her silence in a shaky live video. She emerged without makeup, eyes exhausted, voice trembling. "I know there's been a lot said and I know people have made up their minds about me," she began. "But not everything you see is the complete story." She remarked, "People grow apart sometimes. Connections shift and what you thought was benign can become something you can't explain without outright denying the rumors." Although she didn't cry, her voice cracked repeatedly as she concluded the live stream, saying, "I love Jim with all my heart. I never wanted to hurt him, but I can't pretend things were great." When her words were vague, but the feelings behind them were sincere. The internet exploded again. Fans sympathized with her, saying her speech felt honest, Others blamed her of diverting blame. One remark claimed she still didn't. Deny it, she's just repeating the narrative. Another read, "This ain't an apology, it's a cover." Jim remained silent once more, with no post or response, but according to others close to him, he watched the live feed, and when it was over, he simply got up and went outdoors for He went an hour without using his phone or listening to music, just him and his thoughts. Meanwhile, Cam appeared unconcerned, according to insiders. Began when a small group of Jim supporters organized a loyalty walk in Harlem with posters that read, "Real ones don't cheat and truth over fame." He thought that the incident was overdone and that he had no plans to clarify anything since he believed that the truth will ultimately come to light. Until then, he wasn't about to add gasoline to the fire, but fans weren't letting it go. Large-scale demonstration, it gained media attention and served as a reminder of the breadth of the public's emotional engagement. However, the question of whether Jim would ever forgive them remained unresolved. Although the internet thrives on drama and spectacle, what made this story stand out was its past. Jim, Chrissy, and Cam weren't simply names. While fans were still processing Chrissy's emotional life, another twist arrived like a grenade when an anonymous tipster contacted a well-known gossip outlet, claiming to have screenshots of texts exchanged. Family is based on years of sharing dreams, love, and loyalty. That kind of foundation crumbles, and the pieces don't fall softly. They shatter, and the sound resonates everywhere. A hazy screenshot of what appeared to be Cam saying, "You know it was never just a vibe between us," was written on the blog. Within hours of Chrissy and Camron's exchange of texts that hinted anything more than friendship. Answered, "Stop. We said we wouldn't talk about that night again." The internet went bananas. Fans were yelling in shock. The comment section and even celebrities began to react covertly on their own platforms. One rapper remarked in a strange tweet, "Some people break bread, while others break trust." Although the photographs couldn't be validated, the blog itself contained a disclaimer. A reality TV celebrity shared a vintage photo of Jim and Chrissy with the remark, "Damn, never imagined I'd see the day." The idea of that night became a mystery, and fans couldn't stop imagining what truly happened. Was it recent? Did Jim know about it before it was public? Jim did not react for the third time. The harm had already been done, and the public's perception had shifted from rumor to confirmation. Betrayal, but he published a picture of himself looking out at the skyline with the phrase "anger does not lie." It was a silent, poetic, but excruciating image, and that same evening Chrissy was seen leaving a restaurant with a longtime friend, and she was swarmed by paparazzi with questions about screenshots. Her reaction was quick and straightforward. "Believe what you want. I know my truth." Some people read this as defiance, while others viewed it as a proud confession. Camron remained absolutely undisturbed in public, but noticeably more, he did not publish anything on the internet for 2 days in a row, and when he did, it was simply a dark screen with the words, "Let the loud ones talk." The fan base was more divided than ever, and Jim's fans supported him more zealously than ever by uploading old images of him and Chrissy from their reality TV days, tagging them with "He deserves better." Meanwhile, a smaller but louder group spoke up for Chrissy, alleging that relationships end for a variety of reasons and people change. But the voice note leak was what truly escalated the drama. The voice note, which was allegedly captured by a mutual acquaintance who was there during a private disagreement, revealed a female voice that was supposed to be Chrissy crying and saying, "I didn't mean to fall for him, it was meant to be nothing." The tape was brief no more. More than 20 seconds sent shockwaves across the fan community, because it seemed to show that the treachery was not. Jim's experience was not only emotional, but also romantic, and perhaps continuous. Love, on which he had built his whole adult existence, appeared to have torn apart due to secrets and blunders. The next day, Jim finally spoke out more personally. Instead of a podcast or indirect post, he released a video to his own page. The video was not polished, and appeared to have been filmed on a phone with Jim seated on a couch, his eyes sleepy, his voice calm, yet his face. He added, I know you've been watching all of this like it's a performance. This is not an episode. This is my actual life. And I'm not here to blame or spread misinformation. I simply want to convey that I'm hurting. Because someone I dedicated my whole heart to was dishonest with me. He hesitated and went on to explain that I still loved. But love isn't enough when trust is missing, and it hurts much more than anything to see the people I call family stand mute while I drown his. The video was unedited, full of clear emotion, and it broke through even the most jaded. Thousands of comments from followers provided love support and virtual sympathy. Celebrities began to voice their comments, reposting the video with supportive messages. Some stated he was, others reported they saw a man whose spirit had been harmed by people who should have. Chrissy did not publicly respond to the video, but close sources said she saw it and sobbed after one. And source informed a gossip website that she did not expect him to say that. She expected him to lash out and go. But seeing him hurt like way shattered her. But she never publicly apologized or sought to patch things up. In an unexpected turn of events, Jim's mother, who had always been loud and interested in his life, opted to go live. In a rare moment, she addressed the drama square on, saying, "My son has been through too much to be played like this." He gave his heart to a woman he thought would be with him to the end, and to see this happen, not only behind closed doors but in front of the entire world, is horrible. I don't care what history, guys. You have sincere love. Don't do this. Her statement set off a new wave of opinion, with some admirers supporting her candor and others arguing the family should keep matters private. Too late. The story has already been created and implanted in the brains of millions of people online. Everyone assumed the story had reached its culmination. Reports began to circulate that Chrissy and Camron had been seen together by themselves. At a private rooftop lounge in Brooklyn, there were no images. Only the word of two people claims to having been there could not be substantiated. Thus, followers were free to disseminate crazy theories. Some people quickly believed the rumors, while some referred to it as a smear campaign. Jim had already made up. He changed his mind and erased earlier posts, unfollowed Chrissy and Cam on social networks, and posted a farewell note too. His narrative is that stillness offers closure. As the dust settled, it was still. It is unknown whether Chrissy will ever disclose the truth, whether Camron will accept responsibility or continue to deny everything until the very end, and whether Jim would ever be able to move on from the betrayal that had devastated not only his love but also his connection. That quiet, however, was louder than any previous charges. Confessions. The relationship between Jim, Chrissy, and Camron had been put to the final test. Whether it was love, allegiance, or heritage, something had been lost and might never be regained. Again, time would tell if he would have faith in those closest to him, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be same again. Became a full-blown tempest that rocked the internet and left followers questioning about everything they thought. They were aware of Jim Jones, Chrissy, and Camron. This was more than simply drama. Total breakdown of years of love, loyalty, and public. Jim's silence screamed more than words could possibly express, and Chrissy's refusal to provide clarification alone made the mystery, and the question now shifts to you. What do you think actually happened between Chrissy and Camron? That evening, Camron's cool indifference could have been the most significant statement. Did Jim know more about it? Or was it just a moment of weakness or something that had been simmering for years that he shared? Or did he really get taken off guard like the rest of us? Will any of them ever reveal the whole truth on file? Or is this one of those tales that will always be cloaked in secrecy? We would want to hear your. Please share your thoughts in the comment box below. Which side do you believe Chrissy was misconstrued, or was this betrayal as obvious? But what about Camron? Did he go too far? If you were hooked by this wild emotional roller coaster, don't remember to hit the like button. If you want to watch more crazy breaking dramas like these, hit the notification bell to subscribe to the channel. Don't miss another thrilling update, because believe us, this story is over. Pay attention and continue to be disorganized.